So welcome to our first Friday Live of 2023. Got the year right, which is always a good start.
Very good.
Thanks for joining us. We're here with a long-term friend of Precision Golf, Ben Brooks, who's, this is a test whether I'm going to get this right.
Okay.
No, I'm not. You can introduce yourself.
So as a title?
As a title, as a job title.
Yeah, so my role within TaylorMade is Senior Manager, Global Commercial Innovation. And it's very much focused around kind of the consumer-centric approach. So the change from TaylorMade from being very much driven around product and everything else to also thinking about the consumer and putting them at the centre of everything we do, really.
So what we're going to talk about today is a little bit, we all know about the products from TaylorMade, and you see the drivers and the irons and all the tour stuff, but actually what goes on behind the scenes, what's, who's behind it all, what's the ethos of the company and how that's developed over the last couple of years. So we've known Ben, this is our 19th year, probably 18 of those 19 years, a repeat offender over the years yourself.
Definitely a golf
been in
nerd.
the sports industry a long time. Exceptional sportsman, was an international hockey player for England,
Very good.
and an annoyingly good golfer. His short game's disgusting, so very annoying match play to play against. So we've known one another an awfully long time.
Yep.
So it's great to now be working alongside you, working with you as well, rather than just doing your clubs and sort of finding out about other industries. So I guess how long have you been with TaylorMade now?
So I joined January 2020. Came from sort of research background, so worked initially with Gray Nichols, Gilbert Rugby, moved into kind of the research world, and there's a hybrid model, so aligned to sort of golf product, which obviously, as you alluded to, I have a passion for, but then also utilising the research, consumer insight. So joined in January 2020, and I think we all left the building again on March the 18th, 2020. So yeah, that was the first experience, was kind of getting into the company, finding your way around for a couple of months, and then COVID struck. So. Which is very eye-opening. So
I guess for you as a massive golf enthusiast and lover of the game, coming into the golf industry from hockey, rugby, cricket side of things, how different was it than you expected it to be? Or was it different than you expected? Or do you just come in with, okay, right, this is a blank canvas, we'll see what we find? Because the role was very new to the company as well. Yeah,
and I think that was testament to TaylorMade that, I met with David Silvers, our MD over here, and it was very much kind of like, we want you to come in and have an impact, but we want to see how that can lead and drive the company forward, looking at the commercial strategies, but again, that focus from TaylorMade, that real shift to be sort of much more consumer-centric and actually using the insight to drive product development, marketing, the different teams there. It was very much structured around that. So from my perspective coming into it, as you say, I didn't know what to expect. I'd worked for sort of a family-run business and then worked for a big multinational research agency. It was an opportunity, really, and I think that was the way it could have been. It was either sink or swim. You come in and nobody embraced what you do, but actually the culture at TaylorMade is phenomenal. People have really embraced the idea, the new thought processes, and just, it was a really interesting place to come into and a real cultural shift with everybody driving in the same direction. I mean, that's the bit that I really got from it, is as of the places I've worked, the culture, the people, they're genuinely interested in golf, genuinely interested in moving the industry forward, and just a really positive place to be honest.
Because it's as we were having a brief chat before, it's for us as a, you can it's a sport, it's still family, but James and I are related by marriage. We're a small business, we're up to 15 people. We can. We're not married. James and I are like James's
learn something new every day.
James's sister is my wife. Could qualify for that one, but we can operate a certain way because everyone's in the same building, able to interact day in, day out, and we can operate a certain way and be very personal as a result of that. Yet you go to big multinational corporations like TaylorMade, and it can sometimes be very kind of stiff and corporate and distant.
Yeah, and I think for me, one of the interesting bits was I joined just before COVID, and then we all went home. Nobody knew, there was the uncertainty of whatever was going to happen, and that, to be honest, was testament to TaylorMade and the culture there. Their focus was 100% on the employees. There was never discussion about how do we streamline, how do we get rid of people, what we do. It was very much how do we keep everybody together, even through the process of furloughing people. It's very, very clear why we're doing what we're trying to do. And then as soon as people were able to come back, we were trying to get people back as quickly as possible. And that was led from David Abeleys at the top with sort of town halls trying to communicate what the business was trying to do, through to our MD. And then even when we came back, lots of team things like people did, but try and just engage people. And then also things like coffee mornings where the hierarchy is very flat. So, we'd have a coffee morning with product designers, warehouse managers, different levels. And it was very much, it wasn't talking about the company. It was just engaging that human interaction, trying to just keep people together. And that's been one of the eye-openers to TaylorMade, that real focus on just the people. And we'll have, senior team meetings every Monday morning. one of the focuses is still the employees. What are we doing? How are we moving that forward? Before, obviously, it's a business and commercial strategy, but it's still that focus is the employees, that sort of thing.
And you said about the kind of the business shifting from being very much sort of product oriented to being more kind of effectively more human. So,
Yeah.
And how have you seen that change? Was it a case of being just solely focused on, right, what are we bringing out year in, year out, and just the product and and I guess sort of market dominance versus actually then the people behind it all being, I don't want to say more valued, but actually being part of the thinking of the business and how it operates? Is it that kind of shift?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still commercial orientated. We're out there, we're a business for selling golf clubs, but there is a real desire now to put the consumer first. A lot of the work we do will be through consumer insight, through data analytics, to get an understanding. And the ambition from everybody within the business is to make golf clubs that help everybody perform. So I think, we'd have very much an ethos around those tour strategies, that performance product, and we very much focused on the Charlie Hull, the Rory McIlroy, the Tiger Woods, their performance. And now you look at the breadth of product we're offering. We've got the women's range, the Kalea range that's come out. There's the Stealth HD product. All of that is trying to use those technologies that we develop with the tour guys to help anybody of any level play the game. And that's when you listen to people talk and they're passionate about the product they've been involved in designing or potentially marketing, that's very much that shift in saying, yes, we recognise that certainly a lot of the work I did was through COVID to understand the changing demographics in golf. So more women came in, more juniors. Golf got a big boost when COVID started, and we recognised that opportunity. But we had things created, a women's advisory board, so getting other people involved to try and say, how do we understand the consumer better to make product that suits all those people? And that's the ambition, is really getting people to, we talk about marketing slogans, but hit more shots or better shots more often. That's what we're trying to do across all product ranges, really.
And so product's always been historically designed. There's the tour players that are the main, I guess it's the main, there's the shop window for the brand. They're the biggest marketing element of the brand. Is if the tour players are playing well, the equipment must be good. So the historic's always been developed from tour and then modified for the amateur player. Is that something that, obviously the last couple of years have been incredibly different, and we've seen similarly a big demographic shift of more, a wider breadth of handicap range coming in, more ladies coming in to be fit. Juniors, we've always seen a certain amount of juniors, but I think it's the breadth of golfer type and handicap range that we've seen come in. Has that changed? Has that been the driving force behind almost rounding off and almost designing from the bottom up rather than the top down?
Certainly, so you see that in a lot of the product categories, and the example has been the women's range, where we always had product that would suit women, but now we're trying to make sure we look at it and we view everybody as a golfer, and then actually say, okay, do we have products to suit all those different abilities and their needs? And so now certainly you see within our range of Stealth Plus and the Stealth HD, but then we'll also have the women's going through from sort of the Stealth Performance product to the Kalea Premier range to the RBZ package set. So again, as you said, those new golfers coming in, have we got product that is suitable to them? And then your first point about the tour product, we're looking and saying, okay, well, what benefits the tour players get with the carbon face, with the innovation, and how can we translate that to someone? So maybe a good example is the carbon face. That was innovative, that was new. We saw a lot of early adoption from the tour players, but actually we're now trying to get that message across that can still help a 25 handicapper that maybe doesn't swing it in the same way, maybe loses the ball a little bit right, so now that'll straighten the ball flight a bit with the HD, but they still see the benefit of the carbon face. And can we tie those things together so people can just get that enjoyment out of the game, really?
Because I think one criticism of TaylorMade over the years has always been, it's just churning out another product, and is there really a gain out of it? I mean, the product development, how long in product development would say the carbon face have been, for example? Is it a matter of it's years and years ultimately, but
yeah, so certainly you speak to the product guys and they are thinking a long way ahead, 4, 5, 6, 10 years or whatever. I think the carbon face had been around for a while, the guys had it, we developed it, they're trying to find ways, and sometimes I think they talk about, there's certain things they want to try and do, but physics don't enable at the moment, so they'll keep working, developing those. And certainly it's interesting when you talk to a lot of the tour guys, or the product guys, as well, that they're really passionate about it. Everything they're doing is about trying to see benefit, whether that is ball speed, which obviously is getting harder to get now, whether that's a more forgiving face, enjoyment of the game, the ability, and certainly at the top level, it's all those marginal gains. So we're constantly working with those. And I think it's about, there's always the product development, but we're also interested in listening to the feedback and understanding how do we develop that. But now the culture is very much as well, if we change something at a performance level, what are the benefits we can take down the line to cover all the product categories?
I think that's something with the HD range this year. Sorry, what were embargo dates? So we'll talk about something we're not allowed to talk about.
10th of January is the embargo, but
So there are some products within the range that's coming up that we're not allowed to mention quite yet, where it's actually quite clear in terms of ball flight dynamics that have been developed with this year's products versus previous years. There, where the industry has been crying out for certain elements from a ball flight standpoint. There's been just a chase for distance over the years, quite clearly, and now actually we're hitting that point of. There's only so far you can take loft on an iron before spin goes through the floor. And actually, across a few of the brands, we're starting to see this slight change and shift of now actually getting the thing up in the air is actually quite useful. But I think that's quite clear from some of the products coming that there has been a change in approach in that it's not just get it going as far as possible anymore.
And if you talk to the product teams, you'll see their process with some of that as well has been a blank canvas and getting consumers to hit product. We've created various products and then trying to see what are they learning, what are their comments. And also a lot of it, I think, is also that we would talk about in the research word of quant and qual research. Qualitative research is more talking to individuals, feelings, looks, whatever it is, whereas the quant work is asking a questionnaire. And I think there's a bit more of that focus group that understand and say, let's understand what the consumer wants first, and then how can we marry that up with the products that we're creating? And as you allude to, I think that's definitely seen in the ranges coming, that development.
And how recently has that shift been? Has it been, for example, has it been within the last couple of years or so, or is this something that actually stretches back a while, but we're now starting to see it gathering a bit more steam and influencing the products a little bit more?
Yeah, I certainly think, obviously I only joined in 2020, so I think there has been a change of that, the years where we had white drivers and that was the live or die by one sort of product in 2012, whatever, that's certainly changed, and now we're looking to broaden the range of products. And from a commercial perspective, if we're not necessarily strong in one category but strong in others, you can balance the books. There's definitely a commercial reason for that, but actually it's about growing TaylorMade, and then the recognition that comes from being more consumer centric, understanding the consumer first, and then if you can do that, you can build products that help them enjoy the game, which is ultimately going to build the brand.
Yeah, because you're rather to go heavy into the product side of it, because that's not your kind of role within the business. And how has your role developed over those? Because you came in within it wasn't a blank canvas, but there wasn't a very clearly defined role that you were going into. So how much has that kind of morphed over the last couple of years?
So I think there's not too much that I can talk about, but a lot of it was to do with the sort of brand dynamics, consumer analytics, data analytics, to try and say, okay, how do we start to understand the consumer and make sense of it? So there's a lot of different types of consumer out there. You'll see them through the door in different ways, and maybe previously people separated them by handicap, but actually we say, well, actually, how does that work from our product range? Maybe we want to look at their buying behaviours, their attitudes to golf, their attitude to the brand. So we'd look at different sort of research methodologies to get that data, and then the next step was how do we implement that within the business? So I started with the European team in 2020, and then last year I've moved to take on the global role. So again, it's about taking that data, trying to understand golfers across the globe. Focus certainly Japan and Korea as growth markets, but in the US is a massive market, and Europe as well. And what we're able to demonstrate here, even in Europe, was the different types of golfer that prevail in different countries. And maybe actually there we need to tweak our messaging for different products because of the types of golfers.
So it's vastly different approach and mentality from the US to Asia to UK to France to Germany to it's totally different.
And so I think that's the bit that we're looking at. That's the bit that we're looking at. With the team that I work with and actually sit within in the US, but I'm obviously based over here. But it's very much about how do we understand all those different golfers, and then also how do we turn that into something that's usable and actionable, and then feed it in, whether it's actually marketing strategies or whether it's upstream to the product development, as you talked about earlier. We go upstream and get better at developing product for the golfers. It covers all those areas really. And I think we're just touching the surface.
Any questions anyone's got, if Ben can't answer them from a from a kind of legal point of view, then he'll let us know. But any questions you've got about the brand side of TaylorMade, and again, just feel free to send them in, because anything we can or are able to answer, we'll answer. But I think TaylorMade as a brand has always been, since the early 90s in particular. That was really when I started to play golf that much more. It's always been one of the major brands. It's actually always been innovation in there. But I think as a result has maybe copped a bit of stick sometimes for, so you live and die by the product and how it performs. And if one, go back to the RBZ series, was particularly good, and then jet speed came out and wasn't perceived to be that same leap forward, it's very difficult sometimes from a brand's point of view of managing. Is it a case of managing the consumer expectation of where that model's going to go? Is it, because you can't constantly come out with product that makes a leap. I mean, especially where we are now, there's so little left to do.
And I think the other bit with that as well is, now as well with TrackMan, with other things, it becomes very evident. So a lot of the work that goes in is again driven by the people and their passion to make product better. Whether whether that comes across, and as you say, people are always talking about different changes in the releasing of products, but actually it's because we've made it better and we've tested it and we want to get it out there, and we learn year to year as well. We launched the Stealth and we have a whole year of that, and there's development processes, but I think, that it's always going to be a challenge. We know where we sit within that industry, and because we're innovative, you're always going to cop flack for that, because certain innovations just will not work. But we're always trying to move the boundaries forward, and I think we look back historically, we have been the leaders in the industry. The spider shape, the 790 iron that came out, the hollow forged cavity, even the carbon face. We're pushing all these boundaries in the endeavour to make golf more enjoyable for people, but still that performance gain at the other end.
Would it be a consideration where, if there wasn't enough perceived benefit, to not launch on a year-on-year basis?
I don't know whether I can necessarily answer that, but certainly looking at the tour guys and how far, or the product team, how far ahead they are in terms of their development cycle, I think they're always different things they're trying to develop. So it's just whether and how we bring those to market, whether we can make them work.
I guess that's the thing to remember, isn't it? They're already 3-4 products down the line.
And the rest probably, So, yeah.
So I guess within the functions, where you're now on the global side of it, how is there a different approach? Obviously, there are different markets and consumer behaviours in different areas, but broadly speaking, it's a consistent global approach within the brand, rather than treating US different. You have to in certain respects, because marketing is going to be different. The cultures are totally different from Japan to the UK to the US. But the behind the scenes bit, a global approach, or would it be very kind of region focused in terms of what you're doing?
So that there'll be a globally driven messaging and how we're trying to structure the business. What's the North Star for everyone? And we talk about our ethos being beyond driven, and that's essentially that's everything we're trying to do across the company, whether that's the marketing team, whether that's the warehouse team, whether that's supply and operations. We recognise those are elements of the business that the better we can do those, the better we do the customer service. It's all elevating the brand perception. So that'll all be driven from a global level, but then a lot of the work we do will be regionalised, because there'll be certain things. In Asia, for example, we have an apparel business, so that's an area that we'll look at there. There'll be other individual product that we launch specifically to the Asian market because of the nature of the golfers that just wouldn't work over in Europe or in the US. So it's not that we choose to do something specifically different. It's relating to, again, those consumer behaviours. And then certainly in Europe, one of the things we did was we took a lot of the research and we had very much focused groups around each of those markets. So we really began to understand the markets better, to make sure that we're pushing, although the global products, the right products in those markets relevant to the consumers, really. So a bit of both, really. Starts at the global level, but certainly trying to regionalise it where necessary.
What's been the most enjoyable thing coming into golf as an industry, having a passion for the game? What's the bit you've enjoyed the most?
I think it's been interesting from my perspective, because obviously certainly golf was my hobby, the bit that I spent money on and time. So I think coming into that industry, it's almost, I've been very fortunate. I think it was Kipling that said, if you find a job you enjoy, you never work a day in your life. Really enjoy the product and the golf, and just that I'm a golf nerd. But I think the other bit for me certainly has been almost the people at TaylorMade, and that's the bit that I talked about earlier, is just that culture. But actually coming into TaylorMade, the role I took, as you said earlier, was not quite necessarily defined in terms of what we wanted, but we knew what the objectives were. And actually the adoption of the people, and just there's no, I don't know how to describe it, but there's no sort of, everybody's focused on the same thing. They're all driving forward to make TaylorMade a better company and drive that product and help golfers play golf. So I think that's been the bit that, you just enjoy what you do, and actually the company and the culture is exceptional from the other companies I've certainly worked in. It really stands out as the element, really.
Getting to play much golf? Maybe not this time of year.
I think the phrase we use in work is golf domestic, so I'd play as much as I can. But there's certainly, obviously with the role now as well as a bit of travel, so I'm fortunate I get to play in some countries when we travel. But I'd never say no to a game of golf if I can fit it in. So,
any questions at all? No. So I guess from our point of view, working with TaylorMade, actually, notable across the brands, but I think, and not just those because you said it, actually, TaylorMade as a brand have been quite easy to work with in terms of willing to help out. The fitting side of the industry is, which is big for us because it's all we do, but it's still very small. And I think it's one of the things that some brands are better at being versatile with how they operate, and maybe kind of recognise that, I think this bit of the industry, correct me if I'm wrong, is the fastest growing bit in terms of the customization side of it. Partly the consumers understanding that it actually is for everybody rather than just for the elite players. So you've got a very large pool of people who actually can benefit, and so that there's a good growth onto it. But I think TaylorMade have been, and through the last couple of years, we're very good with the communication side of it. That was it goes back to what you said earlier. That was a standout bit of knowing where deliveries were, when they were due to come in, what's the lead times, what the product was in at a certain time, what you hadn't got a clue what was coming in when. So I think that was actually quite evident that there was very quickly, once we all realised this was a fairly long-term thing, a backup of information for us to work with, which made it easier to service clients and keep expectations in a good place.
I think that's been the thing through TaylorMade is, internally there's a lot of communication that focuses on employees, but then that spread to how do we now look after our wider network? So the club golf pros, you guys, the retailers, how do we work together? Because this is something that we're all facing, and it's a real challenge. So that's something that's come out of that. And I think, as you said, for the growth of TaylorMade, it's about all the different pillars: the service, the marketing, the product. Everything's got to work together. And I think that's the other bit we've had, is that idea that we want to be approachable, we want to be humanised as a brand. So if somebody rings up, we will endeavour to solve the problem. We can't guarantee we will, but it's that idea that people can approach TaylorMade, and TaylorMade will try and help and want to do the best for the golfers. And ultimately, it comes back to that same thing of just people enjoying the game. That's we all want golf to grow. We've had a massive impact on the back of COVID. Let's hope that it keeps going that way. So,
well, thank you very much for your time.
No
it's always
problem.
good to catch up.
Brilliant.
It's nice
Thank
to have had a bit of an explanation about the nuts and bolts that go on behind the scenes. We'll be releasing a video on embargo date of the new product reviews, so looking forward to getting that out there. And to anyone kind of watching, and all the videos on our YouTube channel, subscribe, like, and hit the bell button. Find anything you like on our YouTube channel. Thank you again for coming in.
No problem at all. Thank you.
I look forward to seeing you again soon. So thanks for joining us, and hope you managed to learn a bit more about the TaylorMade brand as it is, rather than just the products. Thanks a lot.
Cheers.